Okay, so welcome everyone to the candidate forum. Just to give you a heads up about the format, we are going to be giving our candidates, Perry Dozier and State Representative Bill Jenkin, 2 minutes each to give opening statements, after which I'll ask them some prepared questions, and then we will open it up for questions from everybody else. And for those of you who might have already seen my announcement, I put something in the group chat. That's how we're going to collect questions to ask Perry and Bill. So if you have a question you'd like to ask both or one of them, please go ahead and fill it out in the chat, and I will hopefully be able to figure out how to get to it and to ask them. So if we're ready to start, Jane, we're ready to go? Yep, okay, so do we draw an order? Who's going first?
No.
Well, in the age-old way of, and this is coming from somebody whose name only begins with V, so I suffered it from it my entire life, we'll go alphabetically. So Perry, would you like to go ahead and give an opening statement?
Yes, I sure would. Thank you very much, obviously, for hosting this event for us today. A lot of people have asked me why I wanted to run for this position. And I want to give you a brief history on myself. I've grown up in this district my entire life, 61 years. And I've served in various capacities over the last 20 years. I served with the Washington Association of Wheat Growers and also as a Washington Barley Commissioner, representing Eastern Washington, 13 counties doing that. And then I went on and was elected as a Walla County Commissioner in 2009. I served through 2016. What I experienced during that time as a county commissioner was a lot of the legislation that comes down from Olympia has a direct impact on us and our communities here, and a lot of times it's adverse impacts. When I retired in 2016, at that point I had considered running for the state senate position after Senator Mike Hewitt also had said that he was going to step down. At that point, I didn't feel that I was ready to move to the state level. My sons were finishing college, but I kept that in my mind for the next 3 years. In the winter of 2019, I chose to move forward. I felt that with my vast experience and my diverse experience throughout this entire district, knowing everything from agriculture to development over in the Tri-Cities, as my in-laws had ground over there, and my issues with water, and also having been a county commissioner, was a good time for me to move forward. I've developed relationships with legislators over the 20 years, and I feel that with that, I can move forward and represent this district and hopefully be the people's voice. I will be the people's voice for this district.
Okay, thank you very much, Perry, and we're going to move on now to Bill's opening statement.
Yes, well, thank you very much, and I really have to thank the Walla Republican Party for putting this together. Great job, Shane and crew. And to have all three counties is a great thing. I was asked actually by Senator Patton, and he convinced me that the Senate would be a good place to go, even though in the House I've been able to build quite comfortably and be able to help the 16th district. I want to be more effective. That's why I chose to do it. I'm experienced. I've been able to build relationships in Olympia. I have proven leadership. My leadership roles in the House as Deputy Whip, also ranking member on the Housing Committee, also serve on Capital Budget, which has been a windfall for our district, and Commerce and Gaming, which does alcohol, tobacco, and cannabis. So being a winery owner, been able to be very effective there. Also serve on the Tourism, the Census, and the Economic Development and the International Relations Committee. I can work with both sides. What I like is common sense legislation, and this biennium I was able to pass 4 bills. I know the entire district. I've worked the entire district and will continue to work the entire district. I'm a business owner with a business degree. My business is closed right now, so I can feel the impact of what's going on. Past school board president, past governor for district governor for Rotary, 2-term chamber president, and endorsed by both current and elected officials including the treasurer, several Senate and House members, mayors, council members, and sheriffs in the 16th district. So that's about me, and I just want to work hard for you.
Thank you both very much. So, we're gonna go ahead with the prepared questions that some of the members of the Central Committee, came up with. And what I'm gonna do with questions from now on, I'm just gonna alternate who gets to go first. So, Perry, you got to go first last time, Billy, you get to go first this time. I refuse to say in these uncertain times, because it drives me crazy, but the year 2020 has been one like no other in recent memory. What do you feel is the legislature's role in these types of emergencies? And what do you think of current law and the current situation in terms of gubernatorial powers? Most recently, example is the mask mandate, and before that, the various ending of business activity. What do you think about this as a matter for the legislature rather than for the governor?
Well, thank you for the question. I definitely think that there's certainly an overreach by our governor. 10 of us in the legislature, we wrote a letter to Attorney General William Barr about that, and other legislators as well. We have a lawsuit in the federal courts. We think that the federal way is the way that we can get things done. In the state, it's almost impossible. We're not being listened to as a caucus. The constitutional amendment, that's what I'll finish with. That's why the governor thinks he has all this authority, and he keeps extending 30-day increments, which we don't feel that he does have that authority. That amendment came through my committee, and that committee, the Constitution change came through my committee, and with that, there was an amendment that Representative Matt Shea has been trying to get through for years that would limit the governor's hold on guns. So we thought it was a real win if we were able to get the Democrats on board with that amendment. And after talking with the chair of the committee I'm ranking on and several other members, they said, yeah, they would take the amendment as long as Matt Shea didn't speak to it. So I had to ask Matt Shea not to speak to the amendment, which is a tough thing to do, but he wanted it bad enough to where we were able to get it passed, and we were feeling good about ourselves. Nobody in the legislature ever dreamed that an emergency would be something like this. It's normally something like a flood, an earthquake, or whatever have you. And it really came back to haunt us as far as this is concerned. But we still were fighting what the governor is doing, and we'll continue doing it.
Thank you, Bill. Perry?
Yes, I think the RCW 43.06.220 is the one that we're referring to, which is the one that gave the governor those powers. And as Bill said, it's been overreaching, which is no doubt. I think what had happened was when this was enacted, it was right after the state legislature had convened and they were on recess. He was able to extend it by the four corners of the state legislature, granting him an extra 30 days, which I won't go into what the four corners, well, I will real quick. It's the Senate, and both the majority leader and minority leader, and the Speaker of the House and the House Minority Leader. So they extend that 30 days. And I think really what this has done is it has created a problem to where the governor has such overreaching powers that it has a tremendous effect on our economy. In my opinion, what should have happened is the state legislature should have reconvened, and we should have addressed the immediate problem, which was tax relief for our businesses. At the end of the first quarter, they were forced to pay those taxes that they had. Now, if you look at Benton, Franklin County, they're going on 3.5 months of shutdown. They are hemorrhaging every bit of money that they have, and they are trying to hold on. We need to get the state legislature back in and address this, and hopefully be able to get through this financial crisis that we're having. It's going to be difficult. But looking to 2021, I think that RCW needs to be revisited, and that needs to be used for what I think it was intended for, and that was the event of a natural disaster, which we look at as floods and earthquakes or the mountain blowing, and be able to par that down to something as to where the legislature has more of a say, so we don't get into this situation moving forward where we can't have our legislature do that. I really think that this would be a situation that will be supported by both the Democrats and the Republicans, because it hurts both sides.
Thank you, Perry. So funding education is a hot topic in current times. How do you view funding should be derived given the current budget issues and pandemic issues?
You're right, state funding is very important, and with the current situation that we have with lost tax revenues, I think it's gonna create a major problem, but K-12 funding needs to stay in place. K-12 funding basically is through state property taxes. When you look at your tax statements, you will see that you pay a state property tax and you'll see that you pay a local property tax. The majority of the funding going to the schools for basic education is about 80% plus from the state property taxes. Those, you would think would be fairly stable. As property values increase, that's going to help. I don't see that we're going to lose property values, but it's what we're going to do to help fill those gaps. And one of the concerns that I've heard from some of the school districts is that where they have to fill the gaps with the local levies, those may be hard to pass coming this next year because of the loss of revenue of a lot of their residents. So I think what we're facing ahead of us is gonna be a situation where we still may have it from the state, but the local ones may be difficult to fill. And I think that we should not try to add additional taxes on top of the residents to do that, but look at ways to cut spending, hopefully in other areas, to bring back some added revenue to the schools.
Okay, yeah, this is a great question on education. It's the state's number one priority, and so because of that, I've been able to meet with the superintendents around the district. We've got a couple of new ones that I've still got to reach out to. I really feel that school districts should be kept as local as possible, like what we did with a lot of the McClary money. I was on the school board prior to the McClary going through, and that was all that was spoke about. It was nice to get that behind us. However, what happened was, and it was extremely frustrating to me personally, was that with that extra money, there was a lot of money. I was hoping that perhaps some of it would be going to infrastructure, and as far as infrastructure in the classroom, and it didn't. We didn't do anything with curriculum, and what happened was the WA got a hold of a lot of the local school districts, and what inevitably happened was that the teachers, and they earned every bit of their money, but the teachers are the ones that really were the ones that were the clear winners there with the McClary money. And so what happened was, well, for instance, my wife's a teacher. She came home and she was ecstatic. She was ecstatic with the raise that she got from her school district. And I started thinking that it's great to be happy with what you get, but not ecstatic. We have to really budget our money and spend our money in more appropriate ways. And so I didn't like what we saw there, and what happened was now we've got this levy equalization and that type of thing that's going on that certainly needs to be fixed, because the communities aren't going to be supporting levies. And so let's just go on. There's still a lot more work to be done.
Thank you. Okay, so, is there still echo? Probably. Okay, there we go. Perry and Bill, and I think this goes to Bill first this time. You have both held elected public office, and we thank you for your service to your constituents. With that said, what sets you apart from your opponent, and what would make you the best choice to represent the citizens of the 16th district?
Well.
Okay, yep, go.
Okay, thank you very much. Really, to me, it comes down about experience. I've got, 4 years behind me, and there's a whole lot of relationships that you build over the years in working together and start working on legislation, which I am right now at this time. And then being on the capital budget really helped the communities and to do things like Blue Mountain Action Council for their development there, the port. And there's still a lot of money to have to be spent with the port. It's a very strong here in Walla. And then being on the other committees that I mentioned before really gives us a little bit of profile, especially on the tourism end of it and the economic development and international relations as far as agriculture, trade, and that type of thing. The leadership positions, I think proves that I'm a hard worker, because to get into leadership after just a couple of years is a tough thing to do, and then to be given the ranking positions, I think they were earned. I enjoy working hard, and that's what it's been during this time. So we have to continue doing a whole lot more. We have to recover from the virus, and I think it's going to take the experience to get out of the cycle that we're placed in, to nothing to do with what we caused, but we've got to get reopened, and we've got to start getting some revenue back to the state. We've got to convince the Democrats to get into a special session, which they really don't want to. And we're concerned if we do that we'll end up getting the tax out of it, but we have to get into special session. So that's what we're working on very hard right now, at least in the House Republican caucus. So thank you.
Perry.
Okay, I agree. I think experience does matter, and I think that's why I want to be your next senator. I have experience here in over 20 years of working with our state and also with our Congress over in Washington, D.C. My budget experience is fairly significant. I was chairman of the budget committee for 5 years as a county commissioner. I had to serve coming in during the time of a recession. We were able to get through those 3 years of our recession, 4 years of our recession, without raising property taxes and with a minimal loss of jobs. And that's what I intend to stress when I go over to Olympia. I also feel that the experience that I have gained comes from the endorsements that I have gotten. I've had 4 endorsements from past 16th district legislators. That's Senator Mike Hewitt, who's retired, served 16 years there. I've got it from Senator Maureen Walsh, and I've got it from Representative Terry Neely, and past Representative Dave Maston, who still works in Olympia. I've worked with all of them over the years, and they know my leadership abilities and my ability to step in and fill the needs of this 16th district.
Thank you. So those were the prepared questions that we had. So we're going to move on to questions that come from the chat. And we've got a variety of questions so far. We're going to have about a half an hour for these questions. So I just wanted to let everyone on the Zoom know that we probably can get through more than the questions I've gotten so far. So please do keep sending in ideas. The first question, we're going to start with you, Perry, this time. I think it's your turn to start.
Okay.
And it's kind of a 2-part question for Bill, but it's 1-part question for Perry. Perry, if you were successful, how many terms are you committed to serve? And Bill, same question, how many terms are you committed to serve? And in particular, why would you give up a leadership position in the House to run for the Senate? Okay, so Perry, you want to go ahead and start with how many terms are you committed to serve?
Yes, when I chose to run for this position, I committed myself to a minimum of 2 terms. I found that out as being a county commissioner. It takes time to really get into the nuts and bolts and how to work your way through the legislative process. And I think once you develop that learning stage, you'll move on to leadership positions. To be able to get to a leadership position and walk away from it after 4 years sitting there is a detriment to not only the party, but to the people that you're serving. And I found that out again, as I said, as a commissioner. I definitely intend to be there for 2 terms.
Thank you. Bill?
Okay, so the first part of the question is also two terms. I feel that the relationships that you build, you'll continue to even enrich, and that would be my idea. I also believe that leadership is important, but serving the district is the most important. And we have a very diverse district here, and it takes time to learn everything that each community needs, and there are varying degrees of needs. Now, what was the second part of the question?
Just why you would give up a leadership position in the House to run for the Senate? If you were already in leadership, why do you want to switch?
Yeah. Oh, like I said in my opening, as far as leaving the House, that was a tough decision because it was put into leadership and was given ranking status and that type of thing, and was getting bills passed. But as it was pointed out to me by Senator Patton, and he's in charge of recruiting for the Senate, was that experience was needed in the Senate because we're up against it here in our Senate race because the Democrats they think they can win this race. They really feel that it's in play. I don't feel that that's the case at all. And I was told that being with the experience from the House that it would make it a little bit better for us to keep this as a Republican seat, which we need to do. The numbers are horrible, 28-21 in the Senate.
Thank you.
Stay muted for a minute. Okay, so remember, this means 1 minute,
1 minute, okay.
and this means 5 seconds.
Gotcha.
Okay,
So
Okay.
Are we running on 3 minutes now? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yep.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, we've got plenty of time if you guys are comfortable.
Okay, so the next question is going to start with Bill, but it's also appropriate for Perry. Bill, what are the ideas for new legislation that we haven't seen or heard of yet? You've been in office for a while. What are your ideas for new legislation that needs to go forward that we haven't yet seen or you haven't yet talked about?
Well, what I'm trying to do through the Housing Committee is affordable housing. It's a huge issue everywhere in the state. So I'm trying to think of ways, and we're working it out with staff, and also had meetings with the treasurer's office on this. And what we're attempting to do is to do some type of sharing, where equity sharing, to where there can be some partnerships with the cities and maybe the counties to, as far as land is concerned, so that we can get investors to get involved with the partnership and allow somebody to buy a house for less down payment and keep it. And there's a lot of little wrinkles that have to be worked out, but that's what we're doing. It's tough to refine a bill to where it's perfect because it's going to be really, really scrutinized. But on this right here, there would be equity partners. They sell the house at a certain point. They can get the equity gain out of the house, and then they can move up or whatever have you, or cash in. So the idea is to get people out of the renters market and into the purchasing market in that way, affordably.
Okay. Perry, your ideas?
Okay, I think probably one of the biggest things I'd like to see would be tax relief. I know that it's something that probably should have happened this last session. Instead, it went the opposite way when there was a projected budget increase. And I know that it probably sounds like we're going backwards with that, as we need to find ways to increase revenue, but I think we need to find ways to decrease spending. So that tax relief would be very important as we move forward. I think raising the B&O tax was a mistake as we move forward. I think one of the other things that's going to be really important that has come up before is how we're going to deal with water and water laws moving forward. In the 16th district, water is so critically important, and it's important not only for municipalities or irrigation districts, but also for our growers. And I think we probably passed the stage of the dams being taken out. That seems to be a once every 20-year issue. And it's more of a federal issue, but it seems to crop its ugly head every now and then. But we need to keep that mode of transportation going. And we need to look at how we're going to continue to help our transportation. If we need to, as for legislation on it, I don't agree with passing more taxes to get that type of revenue coming in. But it's something that we're going to definitely have to address moving forward.
Okay, thank you. We're ready to move on to our next question. Perry, you're up first this time.
Okay.
So you all both spoke about K-12 funding, and that does seem to have been resolved in terms of the McClary decision. But our valuable community colleges are struggling mightily with their budgets right now. Any ideas for what the legislature could do to help with the community college situation?
Well, I tell you, I think education as a whole is really taking a beating right now, and it's looking at how we're going to be able to make it affordable for all students. And it's an important stepping stone when you finish your K-12. And whether you go to our community college, and I want to address that because we've had such a strong community college here and over in Pasco that gives these students the next step going forward. As for how to address the funding on it, I think again, it's going to be an issue really of not so much on taxation, but how can we direct dollars towards the education system, and if it is at the advanced levels, to be able to take from maybe programs that aren't as, I don't want to say important, but that we can move some of those dollars over.
Bill?
Well, we do have an extremely good community college system between CBC and Walla community colleges. It was nice to talk to the new president of Walla community colleges and have a little bit of conversation with some of the board members. And they are very concerned, but they're with it. They're working. They can get a feel for what the shortfall is going to be, and they're working to get that squared away. I'm concerned because the higher ed just doesn't have the constitutional funding that K through 12 does, and so they're going to be one of the ones that are going to be scrutinized. And I'm going to fight to keep what we have, because think of it, what these community colleges are doing is just is very much helping the students that decide not to go to a 4-year school and perhaps work as a nurse with a fabulous nursing program at both the community colleges, and also the agriculture program, the water that they do out there at the Grant Center. And it just, we have to preserve the funding that we can within higher education. Otherwise, it's going to come back to cause big problems down the road, because those kids are our future and we have to protect that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm now going to ask a question that I confess that I know nothing about, but it's a question somebody sent in. So I would appreciate, I'm going to ask the question, I appreciate both answering the question and explaining to me what the question's about. So, Bill, you're up first. The Roza Water District is critical to the basin. How do you plan to protect that?
Okay, can you repeat that?
The Roza Water District is critical to the basin. How do you plan to protect that?
Well, there's a lot going on right now with the Walla watershed, and there was we were able to get quite a bit of funding to keep it going during this study, and have worked a lot with them and attended a lot of meetings and have spoken to Judy since session. We need to do this to where it's going to be best for Walla. We have to some of the ideas that ecology is using are the same ideas, and most of them are, as what was done with the Yakima basins and on there, and what's being developed. Water is paramount as far as our district, all up and down the whole district, because of the need for water rights and that type of thing. My hope is that we can build a good relationship with Department of Ecology and get them to understand our needs as well as us understanding their needs, because the partnership has lasted for so long and it's been so effective over the years. We need to have that, and we need to be able to leverage that knowledge that they've gained over those years.
Perry?
Okay, you said the Roza Water District,
Yeah,
correct?
that's what the question came in as.
Okay, so the Roza Water District, it's my understanding, is in western Benton County, and it's a junior water right holder off of the Yakima River. And my background in water rights goes over 30 years, because I've been irrigating for 30 years. And this is a surface water right. I understand surface water and I understand groundwater rights. And it's usually, as a junior water right holder, you tend to get shut off early. Well, water is what feeds those high value crops in that area. And the more water you get, the longer season crops you can grow. So unfortunately, they're faced with growing shorter season crops, and maybe cherries or peaches. But when there's a dry year, like what we might get with low snowpacks, those businesses will be shut down, or those waters will be shut down, which is a tremendous deficit to the economy in western Benton County. And this is something that I've served on the Walla Watershed Partnership for 8 years. I understand the issues, and I also served on the Snake River Sand Recovery Board. I understand those issues. I understand water very well and the need for it and how we have to share it all.
Great, thank you. All right, Perry, you're up next. Given what seems to be I'm sorry. I forgot to unmute myself. Okay, Perry, you're up next. Given what seems to be the increasing Democratic domination of Washington politics, honestly, why should Republicans even bother? What would you say to discourage conservatives who are watching what is going on in Seattle and Olympia and feel powerless?
You know, somebody asked me that question once: why do you want to go over to Olympia when you're working in a minority and you're not going to get anywhere? And I totally disagree with that. I think the years that I've served, and especially when I look back to my time again with the wheat growers, we were nonpartisan. So we worked with both sides. I actually, in 2000, worked with Frank Chop, who was Speaker of the House at that time. He is no longer Speaker of the House. But I worked with him to help move legislation through that was going to help agriculture here. That legislation is still in place. My hopes are that we won't lose that. And what I intend to do when I go to Olympia is to be able to pull on that experience that I had to have working with both sides. And you don't want to be so far towards one side that you cannot have those conversations. I also had the opportunity to work with Senator Patty Murray a long time ago. So, and those are the relationships that you look at, you build, you understand what is best for the people. It shouldn't be partisan. This should be what's best for the people, and that's where I continue to want to move this forward, is to help all of the residents of Washington State, and especially Eastern Washington, where I'm going to be representing us.
Bill?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. When I first came into the House, the numbers was 50 to 48, and then the Republicans had the Senate. So there wasn't a lot of real bad bills getting pushed through like there was last year with the 57 to 41. It's tough. I can understand the question because it's tough to stop it, and you get beat up, you get demoralized. So what it comes down to is messaging. We have to message on what our beliefs are and our values are, and that's every time I picked up the microphone and talked on the floor, that's what I would be doing. You can't give up. I really feel that on every policy, it's like a circle. it's gonna touch somewhere. You're gonna have some kind of common ground somewhere on your policy that you can be effective on. And that's the part, that's the common sense part, that you can work on something and come together. And that's the common sense bills. And those are the bills that I've worked on. And then you get to build relationships while doing that, because you find the people who think like you do. There's some folks over on the other side of the aisle that they're in swing districts, and they don't want to tick off the other side too much. So they're gonna want to let go every now and again with their values to hit yours. And then work on something to be effective with. And I really feel that that's what the trick is to find the commonalities and move forward from that. But all this other stuff, like the budgets, that's completely done by the other side and voted, which is just majority, is tough. And when it comes to 60%, that's when they have to work with us, and that's when we have been effective.
Thank you. So I've got a follow-up for that question that came in as you guys were answering. So, Bill, you can go ahead and follow up, and then Perry. In particular, how do you think the CHOP situation should be handled? And does the legislature have a role there?
I sure wish the legislature had a role there. The governor is not allowing us to have any role. And a lot of times I understand that the governor's not even listening to his own staff. So everything to me is somewhat unilateral. But as far as CHOP or whatever you want to call it, that should have ended the day it started. That should not be allowed. Not here in the United States. We're not going to have no-go zones here in the United States. It's unbelievable to me that this type of thing happens. We have to put our foot down, and we have to be firm. We have to protect what we have. And you saw that at a lot of shops where their businesses were being protected. And there's a fine line. I talk to people out there and they say, hey, we're just gonna get together and we're gonna do this militia. But you have to really be careful when you start talking about being armed and groups, because in section 1, number 24, it states what that really is, and so we have to be careful on how we protect our rights. We have to do it rationally, but we do have to protect our rights, and we have to be firm about it, and we can't be walked on like we're being walked on right now, because that's not good for the whole state. My sister called me from California. She couldn't believe what was going on here, and I had to explain to her, well, this is what's happening. And still, it was unbelievable. And she's from California. Anyway, that's my take on it.
Perry.
Well, I tell you, I think this really was on the shoulders of the mayor of Seattle. And of course, our governor didn't step in to do anything. He didn't even know what was going on at first. I remember when he was asked about it. I think we all have a right to be able to assemble and express our views. But the total takeover of a portion of Seattle and the way that it was done, and the fact that it did endanger lives. We saw people killed there where they would not let law enforcement in, or paramedics wouldn't go into it because it was unsafe without law enforcement. That's wrong. I disagree with that totally. Again, we should be able to exercise our free right of speech, but not a total takeover as what they had done. And I think that's where this went way beyond the free rights that we have.
So switching gears quite a lot actually, but Perry,
Okay.
What specific legislation would you propose to help jumpstart the economy in the 16th legislative district after the COVID shutdown?
Well, I think one of the things that I would have liked to have seen, as I said earlier, would have been something that happens this legislative year, which is in 2020. And that definitely would have been tax relief to those small businesses that were immediately shut down. I think in the beginning when they were shut down, nobody really expected it to go as long as what it has. But the way the federal system was set up, it protected the employees and not so much the small businesses. So the small businesses were struggling to make their payments and keep moving forward. As I said earlier, they were hemorrhaging every bit of cash that they had. And what really concerns me is when we talk about unemployment numbers, is not so much what we see, because it was a mass shutdown that we knew we had record unemployment, but it's what we're going to get when we come back. So that's what, right now, I think we should have had some tax relief to help them. Let those businesses come back, get going on their feet, get their employees hired again. When people work, when businesses make money, they generate revenue, and they pay their taxes. That will be paid back to the state. That's how the state will get their revenue. Looking to the next legislative session, I think we have to be very careful. I spoke earlier about no increased taxation. I heard one proposal that was to increase taxes by in upwards of $2 billion to help cover some of the programs. And again, if people are in a distressed situation financially, why should we keep taking that out on our individual residents to try to make up lost ground of the revenue that was as the result of a shutdown of business?
Bill?
Okay, so like I said before, on my business, I have a wine tasting room in Prosser, and my business has been closed since the start of this virus. My employees went right to unemployment. They were there early. They got on unemployment. One of my employees is, I pay her very well, but she's making $1,000 more on unemployment than she is with me. So once this does end, what's their desire to come back? And that's my concern, is how do you restart and and be effective and get your business back to the way it was before. I'm concerned with getting employees back working. And so we have to do something to benefit that. And then just to touch on, because this question is almost there, to touch on what happened with the unemployment. That is just unconscionable. To have somebody that's a head of a department that was a good campaign donor be the head of the department, and then have almost $1 billion worth of money going to one single bank in New York, and then the people who are stealing it from us use paid credit cards to get their money in. We have to do something about that, and we have to investigate it.
Okay, thank you. Continuing on the COVID theme, and we'll start with Bill this time. As I'm sure you agree that infrastructure and transportation are vital. With the reduction in revenue from gas tax due to shelter in place the past 3 months, how do you propose to make sure local governments can fund public infrastructure and transportation?
Well, and that's a big problem with especially counties. There's so many unfunded mandates that are thrown their way that it makes it already difficult for them. And then when you have less revenue coming in for projects, it's even more difficult. Transportation is important, and so's rail, so's everything of getting your product to market, because that's what we are in our agricultural environment. We need to continue supplying the counties and the local governments revenue access through whatever means is possible. And I know that there's some people on the appropriations that are working with some ideas for that. They're shared on our caucus calls, but nothing has been come up that I've heard that's going to resolve the problem. But it's certainly a problem. I can respect the question.
Harry?
Yeah, I think being able to fund transportation is going to be very difficult this next year. I know as being a county commissioner, our transportation department of the county relied heavily on the taxes that come in. Obviously, we're going to see a downturn in those taxes. Even at the state level, when the counties were able to ask for matching funds, you had to have a lot of dollars to offset what you were going to get as a matching fund. I don't think we're going to see our 4 counties have those kind of bank accounts to get any matching funds. Plus, I don't think you're going to see it at the state level either. I think one of the things that is going to be the most difficult is, as I spoke earlier, is new projects coming in. What we really want to be able to do is continue to fund those existing projects that we have. We heard the governor talk earlier this year when he got upset about the $30 car tabs, that he was pulling a bunch of our projects here in the 16th district. And somehow it got restored again. But I think it's vitally important that we've spent millions of dollars on some of these projects, that we continue to put those as our priority projects moving forward before we even talk about any spending on any other projects that haven't been approved yet.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna cycle back. Somebody came up with a great follow-up for an earlier question and I had already moved, so we'll see how flexible you are with coming back and forth. And I think that it's Perry's turn to go first this time. So Perry, do you feel police reform is needed? And if so, what ideas do you have for it?
You know, that is a really good question right now at this point. I totally support our law enforcement where they're at. When we're talking reform, I'm not sure what they mean by reform. Nobody's really come right out and said, what is reform? I've heard defund and taking money away from them and putting them elsewhere. I think if it's something that we maybe have to look at with law enforcement, maybe it's additional training that we look at. That's why I was so opposed to the defunding of our law enforcement, because if anything, those dollars should stay there. If the issue is that they feel that they need more training in something, those should be directed towards those departments, not taken away. And to get those departments the training that they need, if that's what the complaint is, for the reform. But no way would I look at taking monies away from them.
Okay.
Public safety is so important to counties, cities, the state, and it's ridiculous to even consider defunding police. If anything, they need more money. I think that a way of solving this is the old-fashioned way is to sit down at the table and get people who don't think alike to discuss and to come up with solutions. We have to come up with solutions. You know, things, it seems like these type of things come and go. Maybe 2 or 3 months from now, this won't be an issue. Maybe it will be. You don't know. So that's why we have to get right to the table and we have to discuss and come up with viable solutions to nip it in the bud. And I really believe that we can do that as a community because it affects the entire community. Could you imagine not being able to dial 911 if there's an emergency and knowing that no one's gonna be online? So we need them, and I totally respect first responders and what they do.
Okay, so we have one more question, and this question I've chosen as our final question, which I think is a pretty interesting one. And I think, Bill, you go first this time, yep. Is what areas of the party platform do you disagree with?
What area what?
What areas of the party platform do you disagree with? Are there any areas? Or anything that you would modify, change, etc.?
Are you, okay, because are you talking about the state party platform, or are you talking because each county actually has a different platform?
Let's go with the state one, because we've got 3 counties
especially
here,
when we
and
have
I don't
4
know what's
counties.
in the other county's platform.
There's a lot of county meetings to go to, and I think that that's what's great. And there's a lot of passionate people that are PCOs in the party and work with the party. As far as the platforms, I'm not going to try to critique the individual platforms, But at the state platform, I know that this question is probably coming from somebody that may have been at the convention. And I was hoping to be a delegate at the convention, but then this pulls you away from everything. And so as far as any particular, I would be amiss to try to pull one out of the hat. I respect the PCOs and state party leaders on what they do, on what they feel is best for the party. I'll adhere. I'm a common sense. I'm a practical. I'm very conservative and have my values, and that's what I retain, and that's what I feel the Republican Party does. So if it includes that, I'm happy.
Perry.
I'm gonna be quicker than that. There really isn't anything I would single out that I would say that needs to be changed or reformed or off the top, that I can think of. So it's something I'd have to really sit and digest deeper, a lot deeper than just a quick answer here in 2 minutes.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we have time for. Now we have closing statements. Is that right, Shane? Okay, and so I think we'll start with Bill for the closing statement because we started with Perry for the opening. It didn't quite work out, but that's okay.
How long are these?
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
About 2 minutes, okay. Well, I don't think I'll take the whole 2 minutes. I basically, again, I want to thank everybody for being a part of this because this is important. It gives us an opportunity to get out because we haven't had that opportunity this whole election cycle. I am the only candidate out of the 3 candidates for this position that has current legislative experience. I've been doing it for 4 years and I've loved every minute of it. It's such a good feeling when you can help people, and that's why I'm here. I'm retired. I was an Edward Jones financial advisor and made decent money, but now it's time to get back, and that's why I'm here. And I'm a common sense guy, like I've said, I don't know how many times, and I really think that that's what the legislature needs is more common sense. As far as endorsements, you can check my endorsements. I've got a lot of endorsement, and I appreciate every one of them. And it makes you reassured in what you're doing. But to me, the most important endorsement is you. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm asking for your vote.
Perry.
Okay, and I also want to thank the Republican Party here in Walla Walla for this opportunity. It's the first time Bill and I got a chance to sit down and side by side and address the people that are going to vote for us. And I think in closing, what I'd like to say too is experience is important. The experience that I have living here my entire life, the experience of 20 years working with our state legislators and agencies, and I'm the only candidate that has that longevity of experience. I'm also the only candidate that has had to work with a government budget during the time of a recession, which I did as a county commissioner. And being able to not put that taxation burden on our residents and trying to retain jobs and work our way through it. That experience is invaluable. And with that being said, I think it's important that we do get out and vote in this primary because this is one of the most important races that we have here in the state. And Bill and I know that, and it's important for our Republican Party to get out and get the vote there and support this party. And obviously I'm gonna say support me. Thank you.
All right, there's one more question that needs to be addressed. How can our constituents learn more about you? So what is your website addresses, Bill?
Okay. The website address is electbilljenkin.com. The Facebook is Bill Jenkin for State Senate 16. And please visit that. You'll learn a lot. I think we both have good Facebooks, and we've worked hard at each of us giving the voters an opportunity to learn more about what's going on in our races.
All right, Perry?
Okay, the best way is dozierforsenate.com. That'll take you to the website. Off of the website, there's numerous links where you can pull up the Facebook. And also the nice thing is I've been doing videos and Facebook now since January, so you can go backwards for many, many months as I addressed issues during the legislative session and as I address them continually 5 days a week. So again, dozierpercentage.com.
Okay. I think that's all we have time for. And so I just want to thank both of you for coming, and I really just feel like,
All of the counties.
and all the counties for participating. I'm getting into here. Oh, I'm muted. There we go. I'd like to thank Perry and Bill for coming, all of the counties for helping to put this forum together. And it's so important for us to support our Republican candidates. I just want to echo what Bill and Perry said, that everybody needs to get there and vote in the primary, and absolutely everybody needs to get out and vote in the general election.